Working on a new training for you guys. It's going to be incredibly powerful. It's going to be like a movie's worth of content in here, like full on, like hour and a half, 2 hour long training. Really looking forward to having this out. Link will be in the description if you're watching past a certain date. I don't know exactly when this will be out, but look at what you're going to get. 1.5 hours, access to recorded calls from real students so you can download those, a contract template for your first client, cold outreach blueprint that has helped thousands of other agency owners get clients with ease, my referral blueprint that will turn your first client into more. So this is going to be an insane training. Link is in the description. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another video. This is a sort of an update on a previous video I did talking about my favorite books and the books that I recommend that you read as an entrepreneur, as somebody who owns a business, or somebody who sells any services, or a freelancer. If you work for yourself and you need education in general on the topic of entrepreneurship, then this is the video for you, because I've spent more than half of my life as an entrepreneur. I've never worked a normal job, dropped out of high school, and now run multiple online ventures, and you can learn more about those on my channel if you'd like. But I just want to talk about the books that have helped me get to where I am today and helped me to sell services at multiple four figures. And even some of my business partners go out and we sell like $10,000 packages to help people with various digital marketing services. So there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm not going to explain exactly what it does, but hopefully that builds a little bit of authority, helps you maybe value my book recommendations here. So I think the first one that you're really going to want to look into is As a Man Thinketh, and this is by James Allen. And the reason I recommend As a Man Thinketh is because it talks about the power of thought and the power of sort of the narrative that you place in your head about yourself and about your life. I think a lot of people are stuck because they've decided that they're stuck, and then they're stuck because of that. And it's almost a negative loop. Either they're stuck or they're growing because they've decided I'm the type of person that grows, or maybe they are, they are fit and they are, strong physically because they've made the decision that that's who they are, and it ends up happening, right? And so it's almost about setting your standards. It's about setting your internal standard and allowing that to manifest out into your life, and then your life takes shape around it. It's a very, very powerful book. And it's a book that got, one of the quotes for my life comes from this book, and it says, "Men do not attract that which they want, but that which they are." So who you are ultimately attracts your life, and your life is based around who you are. Who you are and the decisions that you make, not so much what you want. It's an absolutely amazing. Here's another quote. I wanted to find this one as well. "The vision that you glorify in your mind, the ideal that you enthrone in your heart, this you will build your life by, and this you will become." And what's interesting is that a lot of people assume that the vision that you enthrone in your mind or in your heart is a conscious thing. It's not so much. Maybe it is even more like tangible in your actions. Maybe you can even measure it better by your actions, because ultimately your actions are your beliefs, not so much your thoughts. And so some people think that if I just think positive thoughts, then I'll grow. That's not what the book is saying at all. What it's saying is that as a man thinketh, more so as a man believe, therefore he becomes. And so what you believe is really manifested in your actions. And so it's about shifting your core beliefs and core principles to allow for the kind of life that you want to live. So incredible book. Next one is here. It's by John Maxwell. It's called Intentional Living. And so I am delved in various ministry projects outside of business as well. And this is not just a ministry book, this is definitely a business book. It's an all-around spiritual book. And John Maxwell is a really great author. I love a lot of his stuff. I've definitely moved on from a lot of what he teaches just because it's probably a bit more mass-marketed than a lot of the stuff that I like to dig into, like As a Man Thinketh, for example. I wouldn't be able to read that book if I hadn't started with this one. This is one of the first books that I read back in 2017 that really got me sort of off my butt and got me to sort of begin living a life that mattered, really. And so, yeah, like some of the stuff that it talks about in here is, to add value to others, I must first make myself more valuable. And it talks about how to make yourself more valuable. How do you increase in your different types of value? There's market value, which is economics. There's spiritual value. There's emotional, mental, spiritual. There's different levels of value, and how to almost control the valves on those levels of value. And it also talks about how to impact people, and how to, it talks about some of the gaps that exist in humans. So like there's a list of, I think, 6 things that he states that every human lacks. And if you can give them one of these 6 things, then you've instantly won them over for a long time. And so if you want to be impacting people, focus on one of those 6 areas. And I think one of them is like hope for the future. Another one is confidence in themselves. And these are just some things that you can give to people through your words and through your actions that allow you to live a better life. Next book is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. This one has been bitten up by my dog, you can probably see, but this is a great book, and this is a must-read. I run a coaching business where I help a lot of people start and scale successful digital marketing agencies, okay? And I have, I've gone through at least 30 students now. And whenever they ask me for a sales book, they're like, hey, where can I go to learn better sales practices? I always recommend this book to them, because this book talks a lot about people, and it talks about how to be a people's person. And I'm naturally incredibly introverted, and it's really hard for me to connect with people in many cases. And I'm not the kind of person that naturally, is very outgoing. And I'm good on camera, good one-on-one, but outside of that, it really takes a lot of effort for me to push past, my introverted nature and just my desire to just be alone, really. My happy place is being alone here in my work area and just working on my business. And if I could just do that all the time, I'd be totally happy with it. But I've learned that, the right people lead you to the right kind of life. And so this is how to win over the people that you choose to win over, and how to win the friends that you want to win. And some of the things that this talks about is like how to win people over to your way of thinking. Is a chapter in there. There's a chapter in there called What Everybody Wants, and talks about how you can give people what they want. And then it also talks about, things like how to practice your ability to listen, how to actually be a better listener, and actually be able to entertain people's thoughts to a greater degree. Because I think, especially in the world of business as well, because again, my channel is mostly a business channel, a lot of people are frustrated with their inability to really truly win friends. And because in the business world, it seems to be more about what can I get than it is what can I give. And what you begin to realize is that, I think this book talks about this concept. I'm not 100% sure. I know it's a biblical principle, and it's the idea of your cup overflowing. And this book is like the relationship overflowing cup, right? So like your cup overflowing is the concept that your cup is so full that you can't help but allow it to overflow out into the lives of others, okay? Whether it's financially, emotionally, whatever, right? In love or whatever it may be, you can't help but let your cup overflow. And this book is almost the relationship cup overflow, wherein it talks about how to just be the kind of person in practice, really, because it is a muscle, practice the muscle of selflessness, because ultimately anybody would want to be a friend with somebody who is, selfless in nature. So that's that book. Next book, and this is definitely a more business-related book. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're somebody who's followed me for a long time, this is going to be an amazing read for you. The EMyth. The EMyth is one of these books that I'm actually putting into my upcoming course. I'm coming out with a course soon on how to run a social media marketing agency, okay? And it's going to be a must-read book list in there, like a must-read, not recommended, but like you have to read these books in order to be in this course. And this is one of them. The reason why is because it talks about the different types of entrepreneurs. So you have different levels of entrepreneurship, or different level of really like earners outside of a job, okay? And so first level is freelancer, which is a lead comes to them, they sell the lead, and then they do the work, okay? That's a freelancer. And a lot of people stay there as an entrepreneur, and a lot of people never leave that place, okay? And I am currently in the transition from that place to business owner, which is, you're providing services that you don't have to be there to meet, okay? And I would say 80% of the services that I sell, maybe 70%, I don't have to be there to meet, thanks to a team, thanks to productizing my services. And then the next level is being an entrepreneur, where you're not even in the business or working in the business, you just own the business and you own massive equity in it, and it operates itself and you just take drips from its equity, okay? And that's really what an entrepreneur is, and that's what the book defines an entrepreneur as, and I like that definition. And so it also talks about how to outsource, how to delegate, and how to take a proof of concept or a business that works, and how to build off of that proof of concept to allow for a team and allow for scale. So a good example in context of maybe my coaching business would be, a student who learns how to run Facebook ads for e-commerce businesses, and they say, okay, I would like to scale this, I'd like to do this more, how do I do that? And that book talks basically about how to, once you have proof of concept, begin to scale. It's a very, very cool book, and I highly, highly recommend it. Next book that I would recommend. This is a really, really good one. It's a little vulgar, I guess, just because of the guy's style. But Alex Becker has a great book called 10 Pillars of Wealth. And, this is a guy who was a Air Force, he's an Air Force veteran, okay? And I think he's in his late 30s, mid-30s now. And, the book basically talks about how he went from completely unqualified, doing virtually nothing with his life, just playing video games as somebody who just recently quit the Air Force with like $3,000 in his bank, to growing, multi-million-dollar companies. And he's a multi-seven-figure earner at this point. And he runs a software company and various other, I think, information product companies where he actually educates people and sells courses online, okay? And in the book, he just breaks down the math. So a lot of people, they feel like having a job is safer. On paper, it feels safer, right? But when you actually look at the math, it is the most risky possible thing you can do. And he breaks down that math in this book, and it's a really fascinating thing. He's basically like, if we just look at the different variables that are involved, like with a job, you're worrying about the company staying in business, you're worrying about your bosses continuing to like you, you have to show up every single day, 6 days out of the week, and you have to do all these things. And even if you do make slightly more money than you would running a business, you would literally have so much more time and be able to live a much more valuable life if you just ran a small business, right? And a lot of people see businesses as risky, and he literally breaks down why that 95% of businesses fail statistic floats around and why that's such a popular statistic. Because it's one that I heard as somebody who dropped out of high school to start a business, okay? It's one that I heard really, really, really often. It's like, hey, careful, Trey. Remember, 95% of businesses fail. And in the back of my head, I was just, because it sounded cocky. It sounds cocky, and it was cocky probably. But in my head, I was just like, well, that's because they're doing it wrong. It's like they're doing it wrong. There's no possible way that any logical-brained person could run a business and out of 100 of them, 95 of them fail. Like, and what is failure even? Like, what define it? And so he goes into all these sorts of things. It's a really, really refreshing book, and it talks about finding proof of concept, how to scale it. It talks about, for example, maybe something that you'll find in here is forgetting what ifs and focusing on what is. So instead of worrying about problems that don't exist yet, just worrying about problems that are here and now. It's something that a lot of business owners get really stuck on. Something like focusing solely on what gets you paid. So like, in a business setting, a lot of people may focus on a bunch of random various things that they're not delegating, and they're all over the place. Instead of that, outsource everything and decrease quality just by a slight amount, and that's okay. But focus on what gets you paid, and that way you can have cash flow to actually grow a legitimate company. Right, and then he talks about understanding people, which is again a win friends and influence people thing. Talks about finding friends and competitors and mentors. Really, really good book. Let's see, what else do I have in here? This is a great book. This is another one for beginners, I would say. Another business-related thing. Rework by Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen, founders of 37 Signals. I believe they're I believe 37 Signals is Basecamp. All right, sorry, the video cut out. I don't know where it cut out, so I'm just going to start from the top, introducing the book. Rework, another book that I recommend that you read by founders of 37 Signals. Okay, it's Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Hansen. And this is a book that I read when I was just starting out as an entrepreneur. This was probably, or at least just starting out taking entrepreneurship seriously. Because I've always made money in various ways, but I've never been like, okay, I want to take entrepreneurship, take it seriously, and grow something that I hope to be worth millions one day. That's what I want to do, and that's what I'm hoping to do now, right? And I believe I'm on track to do it, but who knows? So, two things that this book really helped me like nail into my head is two things. So first of all, they talked about doing simple, small things. So a lot of people, when they try to launch a business, they see opportunity in things like getting massive venture capital in the door, or in running a ton of ad campaigns to build a massive brand. But they're just like, no, start small, test small. Once you see what works, add more fuel to it. If it continues to work, add more fuel. If it continues to work, add until you've capped it. And that's how they've grown all of their companies, and they're worth multiple $100 million at this point, I believe. And they're doing really, really well for themselves. So it talks about small daily actions. So instead of big, grandiose, massive one-off actions, just small daily actions over a long period of time. And this is where I first sort of heard that idea. think a lot of people, when they think of business, they think of, startup capital, and they think of big risk and big investment and stuff like that. It's just not where you want to be. I really do feel like the companies that have done the best are the ones that have taken it very slow over a long period of time. And, you see a lot of examples of that maybe in like Amazon, for example. Yes, they do have venture capital. Yes, they do have investors and stuff like that. But it took them if you look at their history, it took them a long time before they first got like their first real line of investment, right? They had a lot of proof of concept, and they really didn't even need the investment. The only reason they needed it is for cash flow purposes, for, I think, building more infrastructure, like the warehousing and stuff, right? Like that, right? Yeah, and then the next thing that I learned from this book was a lot of people say failures are more helpful than successes, and there's some truth to that. But the reason you fail is so that you can because it's the next step to finding a success. And then once you've found the success, just do that again. And so a lot of people say you learn from your failures, and then your failures lead to successes, and they kind of look at it different. They agree with that, but they also disagree in that you learn more from your successes. Okay, so when you have a success, it's more so about duplicating that success than it is about when you have a failure, avoiding that failure forever. Okay, because for every one success, there are 100 options of failure out there, for example, right? Let's imagine there's a big map, and there's like one little success right here, and everywhere else there's failure. So if you keep running into failure, you say, okay, I'll never go there again, I'll never go there again, I'll never go there again. That's fine, but it'll take you 99 attempts until you find the success, right? Or you can just, once you find the success, forget every other option and just focus on the success. And I learned that, and I really think that's a really, really great principle to abide by, especially in business, because you're going to test a lot and you're going to fail a lot, and it's a way, way easier route to go. So I'm going to grab my next book. It's over here on the other side of my room. It is called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right here. And this is a book, it's probably a more personal book, less business oriented, but the two worlds intersect in a massive way. So I don't really think there's no necessity for me to draw a line, okay? So the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This book, the one principle that I really took away from this, actually there's probably 2 that I really, really enjoyed. And the first one is the concept of your realm of responsibility expanding as you take care of the small stuff. So, like for example, when you're a child, your realm of responsibility is fairly small, okay? It's maybe take care of the pet that you have, maybe it's clean your room, whatever. But the book talks about the phenomenon that you'll observe in that as a person is diligent with the small things, they begin to multiply. And this is a biblical thing, okay? So if you read the Bible, you know that it's in there as well. And I'm Christian, and I always reference that. Very unapologetic about it. And you'll notice, I think even Jesus is talking about it. He says, he who's well with little, I'll bless with more, okay? And this book reverse engineers that and is like, this is why that's a thing. So if you're good with little things, you will be given more, okay? And so, for example, in business, that could be finding proof of concept. When you find small proof of concept, and you find a service that works, that the client is happy, and you are happy, and there's an exchange of money, and you make profit, that's proof of concept. If you do well with that, then the next one will come easier, then the next, and the next, and the next, right? If you do well with the money, you turn the money not into a pair of Yeezys, but into more ads to sell more of it for a very broad, unspecific example, right? So that's a good example of that. And then the other principle that it talks about is how interdependence starts at independence. So you have to first be independent to a massive degree before interdependence can truly happen. Because interdependence, and this is a very relationship-driven thing, so it's very healthy for me, especially as an introvert, to hear these sorts of things, because naturally I could go a long time without talking to people and not even notice, okay? But interdependence and true, community starts at every individual within that community being dependent on themselves, right? And independent, more like. So if they can be independent for a long period of time, that allows them to be better interdependent, because it forces everybody to no longer physically and emotionally require one another. So if you require somebody in your life, they shouldn't be in your life. You should cut them out. If you absolutely need the help from somebody, it's not good for you to have that, right? The only good sources for that would be parents maybe, and then any other figures in your life where it would be unnecessary for you to cut them out, right? But for most examples, if somebody is absolutely necessary for you to have around, you should either cut them out or have an honest conversation with them, because independence is the start of interdependence, and that's a really, really cool concept that I really liked. Man, I could go on, but I'm going to cut myself off here. This is the last one. Whoops. Hello. This is all marketers. Whoops. There we go. Okay, there we go. All marketers tell stories, okay? And what's interesting about this book is it basically talks about emotional selling. So there's emotional selling and there's logical selling. So for example, I used to be a wedding photographer. And when I was a wedding photographer, I would meet up with my clients or my couples, 9 months prior to their wedding and talk about, having me as their wedding photographer, and I'd sell them on the spot, okay? And I would close 80 to 90% of these meetings because first of all, they were reaching out to me and not vice versa, so it's much easier to close these meetings. And second of all, I knew the difference between emotional and logical selling. And so in the moment, I would basically, it's a very emotional thing for a client and for a couple to have good wedding photos. So I typically sometimes would either bring my laptop or at least a photo book with me of some of my best work, and I'd let them look through it as we talked about prices, so then I can mix both, right? Because if you just talk about prices and if you just talk about work, that's not really good. But if they're looking at the result as you're discussing prices, it's much, much easier. And now in my business as well, I sell digital marketing services to companies. And one of the methods that I teach my students and that I utilize for myself is something called the value add method, where instead of, just going into a meeting and trying to convince these people that, you're a good fit or whatever, you just go into the meeting and you educate and you just teach them how to do this themselves for about an hour. And by the end of it, they're going to want to work with you, or at least the close will come much easier because you built so much rapport with them. Okay, and that's emotional, logical selling because they're seeing a clear outcome of what they desire to achieve in their business, and they see you as a new bridge to achieve it. And so in this book, it talks about how all marketers tell stories, right? And effectively, whenever you're selling a service, you're effectively selling a story. You're selling a feeling. You're not truly selling a product or a service. Because all humans really need, if you think about it, is food, love, water, oxygen, and maybe a few other things that, are on that list probably. But outside of that, they don't really need anything. And so when you're selling something, you're selling a commodity. There's no such thing as a service that isn't a commodity, okay? Only perceived value. You're working with humans' emotional perceived value, okay? And so when working with that, you must understand, what do humans value? Well, they value certain outcomes. They value certain ideas in their head. They value stories. And so how do you position yourself as the right, bridge to get them from point A to point B? And that's what this book talks about. It's really, really cool. And he talks about how there was this candle shop that was like blowing away the competition because they had the most excessively overdone decorating in the store, and it allowed them to jack up their prices compared to other candle shops similar to them. And people were willing to pay because they were being told a story, right? It's like when you go to a nice steakhouse, the steak may cost the same as any other steakhouse for the steakhouse to prepare and buy and whatever, maybe not always. But really what you're paying for is the experience of a really nice decorated room, cloth, table, candle on it, and you're paying for the experience, the story. You're not so much paying for the steak itself. And so this talks about that phenomenon and how to really leverage that in business. So really, really cool book. And those are some of my favorites, and I hope you guys enjoyed this quick book recommendation video. This is pretty long. I think we're over like 20 minutes now. But nonetheless, I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, subscribe and go check out the rest of the content. I talk about how to start and grow a digital marketing agency, which is a highly profitable, highly lean, easy to manage business, and it's really a great place for beginner entrepreneurs to start, or if you're already experienced and looking for something to pour a bunch of capital into, it's also a great place to go as well, because there's ways to use that capital to outsource, to get more clients in the door through various marketing tactics that I share. So I highly recommend that you hop on. And if you'd like a free training, I have it's almost like the length of a full movie. In the description, you can sign up for it, and you get access to this private program almost that I could be charging you for. It could be its own course, but it's this really long front to back training that'll help you get started if you're interested in that. So thanks once again for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, leave a like. If you have anything you want to share in the comments, do that, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.